Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here, because today we're digging into a literal modern mystery, and it's one that affects millions of people, but somehow it remains completely hidden in plain sight. Let's set the scene a bit. Imagine it's 2 a.m. You're hauling a trailer full of vital freight, the delivery deadline is super tight, and you're just navigating this dark, quiet stretch of rural highway. Suddenly, bam! A warning light flashes on the dash. The engine sputters. You've got to pull over onto the shoulder. You pop the hood of this massive, brand new truck. You can hear the engine humming, you see all the impressive machinery, but lurking right beneath that metal surface is an invisible barricade. A secret mechanism that's totally engineered to keep you out. Today, we're putting on our detective hats. We're uncovering a hidden issue that is fundamentally upending the automotive landscape. We're talking about the software lock, and exactly why modern trucks seem to actively, purposely defy manual repair.
Okay, let's dive into this. Why can't you fix your own truck anymore? It sounds like a pretty simple question, right? But man, it holds a massive amount of frustration for owners all over the globe. Picture our stranded driver again on that rural highway. You've got a massive toolbox right there on the back. You have the exact physical replacement parts you need to get moving again. Heck, you might even have decades of mechanical experience under your belt, but when you try to apply that knowledge, nothing, nada. You are completely 100% locked out of your own machine. So you're sitting there with a rig that costs upwards of $50,000, maybe even $100,000, and it has essentially been turned into a very expensive, totally useless brick on the side of the road. And why? Because of a tiny microchip dispute. Your tools are right there, but you're effectively paralyzed. So, how on earth did we get here?
Section 1. The Death of Manual Repair, a Purposeful Shift.
To really understand this, we need to look at the unfixable modern truck, not just as a broken piece of machinery, but almost like a crime scene. Because traditional manual repair didn't just naturally fade away because people lost interest. No, it was systematically and purposely killed off by the very people building the vehicles. Think about the traditional mechanic's toolkit for a second. We're talking heavy wrenches, grease, physical service manuals with those dog-eared pages, right? These were tools of accessibility, tools of empowerment. If you had the grit, the tools, and the manual, you could solve the problem yourself. But look at this stark visual contrast when we examine the modern manufacturer's barrier. This new wall, it's not made of impenetrable steel. It is made of dealer-only diagnostic systems and highly encrypted software locks. It's basically a massive digital monopoly designed from the ground up to replace your physical tools with an incredibly expensive corporate paywall.
Moving on to Section 2. Unmasking the Software Lock, the Invisible Culprit.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the wording. Let's expose our prime suspect. The software lock is a digital barrier purposely implemented by manufacturers within modern trucks to intentionally defy manual repair. I want you to really notice the words purposely and intentionally there. This isn't just some accidental byproduct of advancing technology, you know? It's not a random software glitch. It's a calculated, engineered feature. To grasp how insidious this actually is, you have to look at the truck's engine control unit, or ECU. The ECU acts as the brain of the vehicle. Well, manufacturers have specifically written proprietary code into this brain so that it constantly, obsessively checks for authorized digital signatures. If you try to swap out a broken alternator or a faulty sensor, the ECU literally interrogates the new part. If the new part can't provide the secret digital password created by the manufacturer, the truck's brain just straight up rejects it. The manufacturer has intentionally weaponized code to make absolutely sure you cannot fix your own vehicle without their explicit digital permission.
And that leads us to this dramatic, honestly infuriating shift in power dynamics. Your wrench is powerless against their computer code. I mean, think about the emotional weight of that statement. Let's say you're a master mechanic. You're someone who spent a lifetime honing physical skills, understanding complex torque ratios, diagnosing engine knocks just by listening to them. You hear the engine misfire and you know exactly which fuel injector is failing, so you buy the replacement, pull out your tools, and with absolute perfect physical precision, you swap the broken part for the new one. The mechanical repair is absolutely flawless, but when you climb into the cab and turn the ignition key, nothing happens. The engine just refuses to turn over. Why? Well, because the software wasn't quote-unquote introduced to the new part via a proprietary dealer computer. All of your lifelong skill, all of that hard-earned mechanical intuition is rendered completely useless by a few lines of hidden code. The manufacturer has effectively turned your heavy, capable steel wrench into a literal paperweight.
Which brings us to Section 3.
defying the independent mechanic, targeting local garages.
Let's dive deep into the specific, calculated methods they use to enforce this blockade and how it actively destroys independent local garages. First up, blocking third-party replacement parts. And we're not just talking about cheap knockoffs here. You could buy a perfectly good, mechanically identical starter motor from a reputable local auto parts store. You bolt it in, wire it up perfectly, and the truck still won't start. The physical connections are flawless, but the truck's computer absolutely refuses to recognize the digital serial number of the new part just because it didn't come in a box with the manufacturer's logo. Wild, right? Next, requiring dealer-only digital resets. This is honestly where it starts feeling like extortion. Say a minor emissions sensor fails. The truck's computer immediately triggers what's called limp mode, completely restricting your top speed to maybe 5 miles per hour to prevent quote-unquote damage. Even if you manage to physically replace the sensor yourself on the side of the road, the truck stays locked in limp mode. You are now forced to pay a massive fee to have the truck towed 200 miles to an authorized dealership just so a technician can plug in a proprietary laptop and click reset. A 5-minute keyboard stroke that ends up costing you thousands in towing, fees, and lost time. And finally, encrypting crucial error codes. Decades ago, if something broke, you ran diagnostics to find out what was wrong. Easy. Today, your dashboard might illuminate a terrifying, vague warning light, but the actual diagnostic data detailing the failure is completely scrambled. The mechanic is left entirely blind because that data is only readable by the dealership's exclusive, astronomically expensive software subscription. It really is an absolute masterclass in making sure consumers remain entirely dependent.
So the crucial point is Section 4, the illusion of ownership, the loss of consumer control.
At this stage, we've totally moved past just wrenches and computer screens. We are now talking about a fundamental, devastating loss of consumer control. Literally losing control over a vehicle you paid tens of thousands of dollars for. There is an incredible financial and emotional sting here. Think about it. You work hard, you take out a massive loan, and you hand over $50, $80, maybe well over $100,000 for a heavy-duty truck. You sign the title. The keys are right there in your pocket. It sits in your driveway. By every traditional, common-sense definition of the word, it belongs to you. But manufacturers are exploiting deep legal loopholes, specifically end-user license agreements, or EULAs. Buried right there in the fine print is a terrifying reality. You might own the metal, the glass, and the rubber, but the manufacturer claims you are only licensing the software that actually makes the truck run. And since software governs every single physical action in that vehicle, they retain ultimate control. I mean, if the manufacturer still secretly dictates who can fix it, when it can be fixed, and exactly how much you have to pay their authorized dealers to do it, do you really own it at all?
Which brings us directly to the core premise and the stark realization of our investigation today: why you can't fix your own truck anymore. Just let that sink in for a second. The system has been entirely rigged. The hood of your truck is no longer a gateway to maintenance, or pride, or self-reliance. It's been transformed into a locked door. A barrier to a proprietary software ecosystem that is specifically designed to extract profit from you long after the initial sale.
And that leaves us with this lingering, provocative thought to close out our explainer today. What does true ownership actually mean if you aren't allowed to fix what you buy? It's a huge question. It forces us to deeply question the future of physical property, digital ownership, and our own fundamental rights as consumers in a world that is increasingly dominated by restrictive code. Seriously, if you can't fix it, do you really own it? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating, hidden reality with me today. Keep asking those tough questions, and whatever you do, keep looking under the hood.